"Well, well," said Lady Howard, "show me the letter, and I will endeavour to advise you." The letter was then produced. It was signed by the clerk of a country justice, who acquainted her that a prisoner, then upon trial for suspicion of treasonable practices against the government, was just upon the point of being committed to jail; but having declared that he was known to her, this clerk had been prevailed upon to write, in order to inquire if she really could speak to the character and family of a Frenchman who called himself Pierre Du Bois. When I heard the letter, I was quite amazed at its success. So improbable did it seem that a foreigner should be taken before a country justice of peace, for a crime of so dangerous a nature, that I cannot imagine how Madame Duval could be alarmed, even for a moment. But with all her violence of temper, I see that she is easily frightened, and in fact more cowardly than many who have not half her spirit; and so little does she reflect upon circumstances, or probability, that she is continually the dupe of her own, I ought not to say ignorance, but yet I can think of no other word. I believe that Lady Howard, from the beginning of the transaction, suspected some contrivance of the Captain, and this letter, I am sure, must confirm her suspicion. However, though she is not at all pleased with his frolic, yet she would not hazard the consequence of discovering his designs. Her looks, her manner, and her character made me draw this conclusion from her apparent perplexity, for not a word did she say that implied any doubt of the authenticity of the letter. Indeed, there seems to be a sort of tacit agreement between her and the Captain, that she should not appear to be acquainted with his schemes; by which means she at once avoids quarrels, and supports her dignity. While she was considering what to propose, Madame Duval begged to have the use of her Ladyship's chariot, that she might go immediately to the assistance of her friend. Lady Howard politely assured her that it should be extremely at her service; and then Madame Duval besought her not to own to the Captain what had happened, protesting that she could not endure he should know poor Monsieur Du Bois had met with so unfortunate an accident. Lady Howard could not help smiling, though she readily promised not to inform the Captain of the affair. As to me, she desired my attendance, which I was by no means rejoiced at, as I was certain that she was going upon a fruitless errand. I was then commissioned to order the chariot. At the foot of the stairs I met the Captain, who was most impatiently awaiting the result of the conference. In an instant we were joined by Sir Clement. 1,000 inquiries were then made concerning Madame Duval's opinion of the letter, and her intentions upon it. And when I would have left them, Sir Clement, pretending equal eagerness with the Captain, caught my hand, and repeatedly detained me to ask some frivolous question, to the answer of which he must be totally indifferent. At length, however, I broke from them. They retired into the parlour, and I executed my commission. The carriage was soon ready, and Madame Duval, having begged Lady Howard to say she was not well, stole softly down stairs, desiring me to follow her. The chariot was ordered at the garden door, and when we were seated, she told the man, according to the clerk's directions, to drive to Mr. Justice Tyrrell's, asking at the same time how many miles off he lived. I expected he would have answered that he knew of no such person, but to my great surprise he said, "Why, Squire Tyrrell lives about 9 miles beyond the park." "Drive fast, then," cried she, "and you shan't be no worse for it." During our ride, which was extremely tedious, she tormented herself with 1,000 fears for Monsieur Du Bois' safety, and piqued herself very much upon having escaped unseen by the Captain, not only that she avoided his triumph, but because she knew him to be so much Monsieur Du Bois' enemy, that she was sure he would prejudice the justice against him, and endeavour to take away his life. For my part, I was quite ashamed of being engaged in so ridiculous an affair, and could only think of the absurd appearance we should make upon our arrival at Mr. Tyrrell's. When we had been out near 2 hours, and expected every moment to stop at the place of our destinations, I observed that Lady Howard's servant, who attended us on horseback, rode on forward till he was out of sight, and soon after returning, came up to the chariot window, and delivering a note to Madame Duval, said he had met a boy who was just coming with it to Howard Grove from the clerk of Mr. Tyrrell. While she was reading it, he rode round to the other window, and making a sign for secrecy, put into my hand a slip of paper, on which was written, "Whatever happens, be not alarmed, for you are safe, though you endanger all mankind." I readily imagined that Sir Clement must be the author of this note, which prepared me to expect some disagreeable adventure; but I had no time to ponder upon it, for Madame Duval had no sooner read her own letter, than, in an angry tone of voice, she exclaimed, "Why now, what a thing is this? We've here come all the way for nothing." She gave me the note, which informed her that she need not trouble herself to go to Mr. Tyrrell's, as the prisoner had had the address to escape. I congratulated her upon this fortunate incident; but she was so much concerned at having rode so far in vain, that she seemed to be less pleased than provoked. However, she ordered the man to make what haste he could home, as she hoped at least to return before the Captain should suspect what had passed. The carriage turned about, and we journeyed so quietly for near an hour, that I began to flatter myself we should be suffered to proceed to Howard Grove without any molestation, when suddenly the footman called out, "John, are we going right?" "Why, I ain't sure," said the coachman, "but I'm afraid we turned wrong." "What do you mean by that, sirrah?" said Madame Duval. "Why, if you lose your way, we shall all be in the dark." "I think we should turn to the left," said the footman. "To the left?" answered the other. "No, no, I'm partly sure we should turn to the right." "You had better make some enquiry," said I. "Ma foi," cried Madame Duval, "we're in a fine old year; they neither of them know no more than the post. However, I'll tell my lady as sure as you're born you'd better find the way." "Let's try this lane," said the footman. "No," said the coachman, "that's the road to Canterbury; we'd best go straight on." "Why, that's the direct London road," returned the footman, "and that will lead us 20 miles about." "Pardi," cried Madame Duval, "why, they won't go one way nor t'other; and now we're come all this jaunt for nothing, I suppose we shan't get home to night." "Let's go back to the public house," said the footman, "and ask for a guide." "No, no," said the other, "if we stay here for a few minutes, somebody or other will pass by, and the horses are almost knocked up already." "Well, I protest," cried Madame Duval, "I'd give a guinea to see them sots both horse-whipped. As sure as I'm alive, they're drunk. 10 to 1 but they'll overturn us next." After much debating, they at length agreed to go on till we came to some inn, or met with a passenger who could direct us. We soon arrived at a farmhouse, and the footman alighted and went into it. In a few minutes he returned, and told us we might proceed, for that he had procured a direction. "But," added he, "it seems as if there are some thieves hereabouts, and so the best way will be for you to leave your watches and your purses with the farmer, whom I know very well, and who is an honest man, and a tenant of my lady's." "Thieves!" cried Madame Duval, looking aghast. "The Lord help us! But I've no doubt but we shall all be murdered." The farmer came up to us, and we gave him all we were worth, and the servants followed our example. We then proceeded, and Madame Duval's anger so entirely subsided, that in the mildest manner imaginable she entreated them to make haste, and promised to tell their lady how diligent and obliging they had been. She perpetually stopped them, to ask if they apprehended any danger, and was at length so much overpowered by her fears, that she made the footman fasten his horse to the back of the carriage, and then come and seat himself within it. My endeavours to encourage her were fruitless. She sat in the middle, held the man by the arm, and protested that if he did but save her life, she would make his fortune. Her uneasiness gave me much concern, and it was with the utmost difficulty I forbore to acquaint her that she was imposed upon; but the mutual fear of the Captain's resentment to me, and of her own to him, neither of which would have any moderation, deterred me. As to the footman, he was evidently in torture from restraining his laughter, and I observed that he was frequently obliged to make most horrid grimaces, from pretended fear, in order to conceal his risibility. Very soon after, "The robbers are coming!" cried the coachman. The footman opened the door, and jumped out of the chariot. Madame Duval gave a loud scream. I could no longer preserve my silence. "For Heaven's sake, my dear Madame," cried I, "don't be alarmed, you are in no danger, you are quite safe, there is nothing but—" Here the chariot was stopped by 2 men in masks, who at each side put in their hands as if for our purses. Madame Duval sunk to the bottom of the chariot, and implored their mercy. I shrieked involuntarily, although prepared for the attack. One of them held me fast, while the other tore poor Madame Duval out of the carriage, in spite of her cries, threats, and resistance. I was really frightened, and trembled exceedingly. "My angel," cried the man who held me, "you cannot surely be alarmed? Do you not know me? I shall hold myself in eternal abhorrence if I have really terrified you." "Indeed, Sir Clement, you have," cried I; "but for Heaven's sake, where is Madame Duval? Why is she forced away?" "She is perfectly safe, the Captain has her in charge; but suffer me now, my adored Miss Anville, to take the only opportunity that is allowed me to speak upon another, a much dearer, much sweeter subject." and then he hastily came into the carriage, and seated himself next to me. I would fain have disengaged